What's up, everybody? Mark Bursteiner here, and after some really nice toys to play with in Mala Tempora, it is time to take a look at the newest Netrunner data pack in the spin cycle, True Colors, and see which of those true colors shine through. I bet nobody's made that joke yet. True Colors is the fourth pack in the spin cycle, and it is a spicy one so far. Lots of really good stuff for the Corp in here, and I'm going to be giving grades to these cards, though I haven't done that before, so just a disclaimer, these grades are kind of in a vacuum. I look at card one by one on its own before we've really had a chance to see how it shakes out. So they're basically as much predictions as they are grades. So with that out of the way, let's take a look. Let's get started on the runner side with a program called Keyhole. Keyhole is a program with 2 memory units for an install cost of 4, an influence of 3, and its ability reads, click, make a run on R&D. If successful, instead of accessing cards, look at the top 3 cards of R&D, trash one of those cards at no cost, even if it cannot normally be trashed, and the Corp shuffles R&D. This is an Anarch card. My goodness, it's a little bit costly on the MU, but it really looks like Anarch is going to be a little bit more and more viable as we finish out the spin cycle. Despite that heavy MU cost, it works really well with Deep Red if you're running Caisas because you've got enough room to have everything installed. And if your chief concern is getting into R&D, which Anarch already does fairly well with Medium, this is right up your alley. It protects against snares and anything else, something else from Jinteki that we're actually going to see a little bit later in this review, since it doesn't actually access. And it fills up the archive, so it forces the Corp to start focusing their resources on protecting the archives for fear that if you dump an agenda into there, that you'll be able to get it. So even if you're not really scoring agendas off of using Keyhole, you're still getting a ton of value, I think. It also digs deeper than Medium does, quite a bit faster. And if you're digging, multiple times per turn, if you're using 2 or 3 clicks per turn to make runs on R&D with Keyhole, you could, in theory, put 3 agendas into their archives, which is just, it's really difficult to deal with. If they're running Jackson Howard, you can basically force them to pop Jackson Howard right then, so they're not going to keep getting that card advantage. I think it's a really good card. I think the more I think about it, the more I think that it's good. At first, I was like, not so super sure. But I do think that this is probably going to see some play, and I'm really happy to see Anarch starting to get so much love when they haven't really been the strongest in the meta for quite some time. I think it's a really deep card. I think there's a lot more to say about it, but for now, I'm going to give this a solid A. I think it's going to see a lot of play as Anarch starts to come into its own, and I think it's something to keep an eye on for sure. Next up, we've got Activist Support. It is a resource. It's got an install cost of 1, influence 2. When the Corp's turn begins, you're going to take 1 tag if you have no tags, and when your turn begins, give the Corp 1 bad publicity if he or she has no bad publicity. This is an Anarch card. All right, so this is kind of the opposite of Keyhole for me. Activist Support is really not super solid in my mind. I can see scenarios where you don't mind being tagged, but I really just don't see how you play this and the Corp doesn't just immediately trash it. Then in that scenario, the card basically reads, play this card, costs you 1, take a tag, and then trash it. Like, I don't know. Get out of here. Get out of here with this. I can't see a scenario where they let it go back to your turn to get a bad publicity. They would just trash the thing as soon as they had the opportunity. That said, though, if they don't trash it, now that you're tagged, giving the Corp a bad pub is really nice, and it's recurring, and presumably you don't care about your tags in this situation, but I mean, that's just a best case scenario mentality. Look at it, and it's, even at that point, it's just marginal. It's not really worth a card. This is a massive boo. It's a D. Don't play this. Don't play this. Next up, we've got Lawyer Up. This is one of my favorites. This is a double, so this is going to cost you 2 clicks to play. It's going to cost you 2 credits. It's a criminal card. It's got 1 influence. And as an additional cost to play it, you're going to spend a click because it's a double. It removes up to 2 tags and draws you 3 cards. 2 tags, gone. 3 cards for 2 clicks and 1 credit. Now, just let's look at what it takes to get rid of 1 tag, right? 1 click and 2 credits to get rid of a tag. So already you're kind of in good shape here. You're spending about the same amount just to get rid of 1 tag, except you get to get rid of 2. And then you get to draw 3 cards on top of that. I love this. if you're playing a count siphon, which you generally are as a criminal, you're spending 2 clicks and 4 credits just to get rid of the 2 tags you picked up. Or you could use this and spend 1 credit and 2 clicks to get rid of the 2 tags you just picked up and net yourself 3 cards, or net yourself 2 cards because it costs 1 card to play. So imagine you just use your first click to siphon for 5. You have 2 tags, second click, you lawyer up. Not only do you get a discount on the tag removal from 4 down to 2, but it offsets the fact that it costs you a card to do so by replacing itself and then some. Drawing through 3 is really, really explosive, especially if you're running Andromeda, and I think this is definitely going to see some play. It's one of the better doubles we've seen for the runner, especially compared to the last double that we saw for the criminal running interference. I think lawyer up gets you much more value, much more consistently. I think in the deck that wants this card, it's easily an A. All right, we're going to move on to leverage. This is an event that costs 1, influence 2. It's a criminal card. You may only play it if you made a successful run on HQ this turn, and it prevents all damage until the beginning of your next turn, unless the Corp takes 2 bad publicity. This one's really interesting. In Magic, this is known as a Punisher card. This is one of the tough things about Punisher cards is that if you have 2 very different effects, it's very easy for your opponent to make a decision. And anytime you give your opponent a decision about what happens to you, you're giving yourself a disadvantage. The trick with Punisher cards is to get the effects closer together, because if they're 2 very different effects and they have an easy choice, basically they pick the one that's not so bad for them and you end up with a dead card. If they're similar enough to one another that either way it's really, really bad for them in the same way, then it makes it much more difficult for them to make a good decision, and it makes it much better for you to end up with something that you actually wanted after you play the card, thus making it not a dead card. I think leverage is a pretty good example of this. Either way, it's going to enable an aggressive turn for you. Whether you're not taking damage or you're going to get 2 extra credits to make on your runs, either way, you're going to be, in Magic we say turning your guy sideways, you're going to be on the aggressive here. The caveat here is that you have to have made a successful run on HQ. That's a little tough, not insane, totally doable. There are plenty of cards that have that caveat, but I think I'd have happily paid like 3 credits instead to remove that caveat, since criminals are generally comfortable with your economy anyway. That said, it's playable, but it really, really wants to be in an aggressive run as much as you possibly can deck. It's also fantastic against Jinteki, obviously. It definitely hoses just about everything down from them. It really just means you're going to be able to get in there as long as they give you the damage prevention to be able to get in there. This is one of those decks that one of those cards that kind of sits right in the middle for me. In the right deck, with the right matchup, it's kind of like a B-, but in just about everything else, I got to give it a C. Next up, we've got Garrett, Wolf, Garrett Program, Icebreaker, subtype killer. It's a criminal. It's got install costs of 7, 2 memory units, 2 strength, and influence of 3. 1 credit's going to break a sentry subroutine for you, and 1 credit is going to pump its strength. If you start looking at the text box here, it's actually like pretty good, right? But then you look at the cost. 7 credits and 2 memory units is really prohibitive. It feels like it's got this like Leviathan syndrome almost. Sure, you can pay extra for the solution, but do you really want to? It's a lot of investment for something that criminal can do pretty well already between femme fatales and fairies, and I have a really hard time seeing how 7 credits and 2 MU is even remotely realistic, even if you do get to keep it longer than you get to keep a fairy. I'm not even remotely sold on this until I'm convinced otherwise. I'm sure someone can figure it out, but for me, this is getting a D now. LLDDS Processor is a Shaper hardware chip with an install cost of 1 and an influence of 1. Whenever you install an Icebreaker, that Icebreaker has +1 strength until the end of the turn. The first thing I do when I look at a card, whether in Magic or any card game or Netrunner or whatever, is I read the effect and I say to myself, is this worth having in a deck? Like actually just taking up a slot? Because if this is in a deck, you're not running another card. And in this case, the answer is definitely no. It's a decent effect at a reasonable cost, but the inherent cost, the opportunity cost of running it in your deck is just not worth the slot that it takes up. It just doesn't do enough to be worth an entire card. You could be running another card that does more, even if it costs more. If it did literally anything else, I might consider it, But as it sits, it's only going to help you for one turn, and you're not going to be playing all of your icebreakers on one turn and making a run at the same time. You're just going to be way too cramped on cash. So I just don't see how this is worth running in any kind of competitive deck. And even at the kitchen table, it's just not good. Gets a D. Sharpshooter is a program. It's an icebreaker. It's got an install cost of 1, and 1 memory unit is what it will take up. It's got 3 strength, and its shape or influence is 1. You can trash this thing to break any number of destroyer subroutines, and you can spend 1 credit to pump it by 2 strength. This one's kind of interesting. It's kind of on the surface, it looks better than it is. You're like, okay, I could just trash it and break all the destroyer subroutines, but you still need to be able to pump it to be able to interact with a destroyer that's bigger than it is. But some of the more sinister ice in the meta right now are destroyers, so that's worth noting. Any ice that trashes a program is a destroyer, so here we're looking at Grim, Archer, Rototurret, and Ichi, both of its iterations. Of these, Rototurret is the only one that can be hit without pumping your Sharpshooter. So for 1 credit and a card, you can break both subroutines on a Rototurret. But to get through Ichi 1, you're going to need to pump it once. And to get through Ichi 2, Archer, or Grim, you're going to need to pump it twice. And then you're asking a little bit more of me to try and break these subroutines. At that point, I'm asking myself, would it be better to use something else? That said, if you are just like preparing to make your big run, you can definitely ensure that you're going to get through those destroyers with this. I don't think Sharpshooter's insane. I don't think it's super bad. I don't think it's an auto-include, and I don't think it's a never play. But it's got a specific problem that it's a solution for, which does help keep its cost totally reasonable. And I think that having a 1-of in a Shaper deck is completely reasonable. It's a great target for a tutor, and Shapers are really good at getting what they need when they need it. So I think that this is a solid C+. Next up, we've got a unique Shaper hardware called Capstone. For an install cost of 2 and influence of 3, you can spend a click to trash any number of cards from your grip, and for each trash card of which you have another copy installed, draw a card. I hated this at first. I really hated this at first, but I remembered it's a Shaper card. Shaper kind of wants these weird combo-y things that you kind of need to try to make work. It's kind of a Johnny faction. If you've got a copy of something installed already, being able to cycle it for a click is fine. And the install costs for this is pretty reasonable at 2. But realistically, you really need to be able to have more than one thing installed in order to be able to net more than one card. Because if you're discarding something to draw a card, you could just as easily just draw a card without Capstone. If you're in Shaper, sometimes you don't really mind having things in the heap. In fact, sometimes you prefer to have things in the heap to be able to interact with them there. Clone ship, whatever, what have you. But my problem is with Capstone, it's kind of a win more card. If you're behind, it doesn't really help you catch up. If you're even or ahead, it can definitely do some work. If you're discarding and drawing 2 or 3 cards at a time, it can definitely help you work toward digging to the card that you need to help close out the game. But it really does ask a whole lot of you, and I'm still on the fence about it. I could be proven wrong, but I think this is a C. You know what? No, it's not even a C. It's a D. It's a D. I don't see how this is worth playing in almost any deck. Starlight Crusade Funding is a resource. Influence 0, install cost of 1, so it's neutral. When your turn begins, lose a click. Already not a good start. Ignore any additional any additional costs on any event that you play. All right, this thing. I'm getting sassy here, huh? In an all doubles deck, if you're playing just like every card in your deck is doubles, this thing can be insane. It can get you 6 clicks worth of value every single turn, but I really don't see that being a viable deck anywhere but the kitchen table for a little bit of funsy onesies. This is not going to be a competitive thing. Not to mention, I hate any card that takes options away from you, and mandatory click spending like Wildside or whatever, or Hard at Work, I can figure out ways to get that kind of value while still retaining the ability to use that click for something else if I need it. You're still going to need to be able to make runs. You're still going to need to be able to install stuff. And asking that your entire deck be built around this card is really, really tough for me. I don't see how this is even remotely viable anywhere but the kitchen table. And even on the kitchen table, it's a novelty that's going to get old probably rather quickly. This is an F. Okay, let's move into the corporations side of the equations. First up, we've got Rex Campaign. It's an asset, it's an advertisement, res cost of 1, trash cost of 3, and 2 influence for Hasbioroid. Place 3 counters, power counters, on a Rex Campaign when it is resed. When there are no more power counters left on Rex Campaign, trash it and either remove 1 bad publicity or gain 5 credits. When your turn begins, remove a power counter from Rex Campaign. Not too bad, not too bad. On the surface, I kind of like this. It's kind of the opposite of the kind of card I just mentioned. It gives you options rather than taking options away. If the runner trashes it, you're not super upset. They had to spend 3 credits to do it, not to mention making the run to access it. If you do pop it and you have a bad pub, you get rid of one of them. And if you don't have bad pub, you get 5 credits. It's a really nice versatile card at a reasonable cost. Sure, there are lots more efficient ways to help the economy in Hasbioroid decks, which is definitely a corp that demands a lot of cash. But this is really, really versatile, and it really doesn't ask that much of you. And especially since we've seen a few new Hasbioroid cards that are giving you bad publicity, I can definitely see a use for this thing, maybe as a 1 of or a 2 of. Like I said, sure, you could do Adonis or Eve Campaign if you're really looking for money, but that's not what this is doing. The money is a kind of a secondary thought here. The floor isn't terribly low on it, the ceiling isn't terribly high either, and the effect is marginal at best, but these kinds of incremental advantages are kind of what wins games in Netrunner, and having these kind of options is really, really important. Plus, at only 2 influence, it's splashable in Wayland, who can certainly make a lot more use of the bad pub removal than more often than not. I think it's worth playing with. I think it's worth tinkering to see how well it fits into Hasbioroid decks. I think this is a solid B-. Next up, we've got Fenris. This is a Sentry Ice. It's an AP. It's a Hasbioroid illicit. Got so many Sentry AP illicit, so many subtypes. Res cost of 4, strength of 2, and 2 Hasbioroid influence. When you res Fenris, take 1 bad publicity. This is what I was talking about. There's more Hasbioroid Ice giving you bad publicity these days. So its effects are, the subroutines are, do 1 brain damage and end the run. Now we see a little bit, this helps along with Rex Campaign. If you play these 2 together, you know, you're not usually getting a ton of bad pub as Hasbioroid, but if you do end up with 1, it is going to make a difference, and having a Rex Campaign just sitting around ready to get rid of it should you encounter it is really nice. Even without a way to remove the bad publicity, I think this is exactly what Hasbioroid needs and wants. A little bit cheaper ice along the lines of Eli, but you can't click through this one, which is really, really important. They'll have to break it, and 1 brain damage is really sinister, not to mention those 3 beautiful words that we love to see on ice, end the run. Very nice. My only worry here is that at 2 strength, it's not going to be too terribly tough for them to get past this if they need to. But again, that's kind of the name of the game with most Hasbioroid ice that you can click through anyway. So they're going to be able to get through it if they really need to. Again, at 2 influence though, it's also splashable. So if you can fit this nicely into Jinteki, help deal more damage, or into Wayland if you're getting bad pub already, not bad. Seems like a nice little versatile card. I think we might see this one turn up more often than it lets on. And I think a B, maybe B+ sounds about right here. No, we're going to leave it at B. Let's not get crazy. Let's not get crazy. Next, we've got Panic Button, one of my favorite cards so far. This is an upgrade with a res cost of 1, trash cost of 2, and 1 Hasbioroid influence. This may only be installed in the root of HQ. HQ, that's your hand. 1 click, draw 1 card. Use this ability only during a run on HQ. And let's just talk about the flavor text here for a second. The button didn't seem to do anything, so we pushed it again, and again, and again. God, the flavor text is so good. And the flavor of the card, and Netrunner is so good with this stuff in general. This is one of my favorite things about the entire game. The flavor goes so deep, and this card just knocks it out of the park. Even if the card were awful, I would still be highlighting it because the flavor is just fantastic. Think about it. You're the Corp. You've got 2 agendas and an operation in hand. The runner just made it through to your HQ. You've got 3 credits, so you spend them all, and you go from a 2 to 3 chance 2 out of 3 chance that they take an agenda to a potential 1 out of 3 chance. That's a huge, huge difference. Sure, you had to spend the 3 credits, but worst case scenario, now you've got a stocked up hand for next turn. And just the idea of just bashing the panic button as they're about to access your hand is so exciting to me. Now, if you hit more agendas from your deck, from R&D, you could be in trouble. But realistically, you were in trouble anyway. So not to mention, when you start that next turn with all those cards, you could start with like 8 cards in hand. That could be devastating for the runner. That's a really, really big deal. The card asks barely anything of you, and it does demand that your economy is like in decent shape so that you can have some credits to attempt to hit the button. But it counters Account Siphon, which is amazing. They're about to hit HQ, and they're about to siphon your credits away from you anyway, so what better way to use them than to just dump them into getting some cards out of it instead? Not to mention that it keeps them off of the credits that they would have gotten because they need to be able to steal the credits from you in order for them to get them. I don't think it's an auto-include, but it is super splashable at 1 influence, and I think it's definitely going to see some play as a 1 or 2 of, maybe even a 3 of. I could be swayed by the fact that this thing is just like dripping with flavor, but this is a solid B for me. I think this thing is fantastic. I love it. It's great. I can't wait to play it and just bash that panic button as fast as I can. Next up, we've got Shock. It's an asset. It's an ambush asset. Res cost of 0, trash cost of 2, influence cost of 2 for the ye old Jinteki. If Shock is accessed from R&D, the runner must reveal it. When the runner accesses Shock, do 1 net damage, even if it's not installed. Sound a little familiar, doesn't it? This is a lot like Snare. It's like a little baby brother version of Snare, and what is there to say, really? It works from archives. If you're in Jinteki, you run this card. End of story. Play Shock. It costs you nothing. It works from everything. This is an A+, auto-include. Enjoy your gifts, Jinteki. This is fantastic. Next up, we've got Tsurugi, which is an ice. It's a sentry. It's an AP. Res cost of 6, kind of high. Strength 2, influence 2 for, again, ye old Jinteki. It reads, end the run unless the Corp pays 1. Subroutines, do 1 net damage, do 1 net damage, do 1 net damage. All right. Seems kind of right in line with Jinteki, and I do kind of want to like this card, plus it's a sword, so that's cool. But between the recurring cost to the Corp, because that is a subroutine, it's really small strength and a pretty hefty res cost, I just can't see this going anywhere. It's going to take a little bit of work for the runner to get through, sure, but we've seen runners get through way worse and way stronger ice in the current meta. I think I'm going to pass on this one. I'm going to give it a D. Next, we've got TGTBT. It's an agenda, an ambush agenda. Advancement cost of 3 and a score cost of 1. If TGTBT is accessed from R&D, lots of letters, the runner must reveal it. When the runner accesses TGTBT, give the runner 1 tag. Okay. I think Midseason Replacements has a new friend here. At a 3-1 agenda, I don't know that you're really looking to score it, because that's not best case scenario for 3 advance. But leaving it laying around for the runner to steal, enabling a midseason next turn, and then giving them a tag to deal with at the same time is pretty good, I think. Yes, you lose a little bit of control over when it happens, as opposed to breaking news, which is a more controllable situation for giving the runner a tag or 2. But I do think it's worth tinkering with in this kind of situation. Running these out early, letting the runner take them, and then immediately mid-seasoning into that sounds like a really great way to start the early turns of the game. I think the biggest thing about TGTBT is deciding where exactly to put it in your deck, meaning what you're going to cut. And same thing we were talking about on the runner side, there's the idea of opportunity cost. Is this really better than something else? I think it's going to take a little bit of play to figure it out. NBN Fast Advance has lots and lots of options already for agendas, but I think trying out TGTBT in place of breaking news might actually end up not being too good to be true. Get the joke? That's a joke. I'm going to give it a C, but I do reserve the right to bump it to a B. I think there's something there. Next up, we've got maybe my favorite card in the entire pack, Sweeps Week. It's an operation, costs 1 credit, influence of 2 for NBN, gain 1 credit for each card in the runner's grip. That's right, gain 1 credit for each card in the runner's grip. That is some fantastic economy situation for NBN. It punishes the runner just for playing the game. This will, like, they want to keep their hands full as often as possible because they could die if they're flatlined. This will often turn into a 4 credit net gain, but it has the potential to be absolutely explosive against Andromeda. Turn 1 net 8 credits is just silly. The floor and the ceiling on this are both so high, it asks hardly anything of you, and it has the potential to set up for a turn 1 or a turn 2 restructure. If you're in NBN, you are playing this. This is absolutely fantastic. Exactly the kind of economy NBN was asking for. A lot of fast advanced decks in NBN run like Beanstalk Royalties or other stuff that's out of faction. Now they've got their very own fantastic economy card. It's an absolute must-play, auto-include, bomb-tastic A+. RSVP is an ice code gate with a res cost of 3, strength of 4, and influence of 2 for NBN. The runner cannot spend any credits for the remainder of this run. I'm going to say that again because it feels really good to say. The runner cannot spend any credits for the remainder of this run. It's basically an NBN flavored chum, but the main differences are that it affects all the ice behind it. Chum only affects the 1 behind it, this says, for the rest of the run. And that I have a hard time seeing how the runner doesn't just jack out after this subroutine runs, which it's likely that it's possible. It's a code gate, so it's tough to deal with for some factions, and it's got 4 strength, which isn't anything to scoff at. But even with res to ice behind it, they can't do anything about it. So why wouldn't they just jack out? They're not just going to suffer a bunch of subroutines just for the sake of doing so. That said, that's still amazing. And on the off chance that they continue, they're going to have a hell of a time getting through that. And if they hit an asset, they can't even trash it because in order to trash, they had to spend credits to do so. It's basically break a code gate or GTFO. That's it. I think it's going to see some high-level play. It basically just says end the run or break this subroutine. I think it's really affordable. I think it's great on influence. It's a very, very strong B+. I could even see an argument for A- for me. I can't wait to play with it. A Wayland Ice called Curtain Wall is a barrier with a res cost of 14, a strength of 6, and an influence cost of 2. If Curtain Wall is the outermost piece of ice protecting a server, it has +4 strength. That would put it to 10 strength, if you're counting. Here are the subroutines. Are you ready? End the run, and you guessed it, end the run. And then the flavor text on this one, this is another one. Like, I just love Fantasy Flight games. The flavor text on this one has the little subroutine icon and says, end the game. Just kidding. Like, this thing is just ridiculous. It's really kind of like a fun card, and like even like I'm not convinced it's good, but I just like the flavor aspect of it. But we are talking about Wayland here, so they do have lots of money, plenty of ways to get into the end game, and access to Oversight AI, which is going to let them res this at way less than 14. But man, this is a finisher if I ever saw one. This is kind of exactly what you want to be doing when you're that late in the game. You install your last agenda on a somewhat built-out server. It doesn't even need to be an amazingly strong server because Curtain Wall strength will be at 10 at that point if it's the outermost. And the runner needs to get a barrier breaker to 10 strength and break all 3 of the subroutines just to make it through that one ice. All right, so for a corroder, we're talking about 11 credits, and then they have the rest of the stack to deal with. That's quite a tall order to ask from a runner. The problem here is that this is basically Hadrian Wall's big brother, and Hadrian Wall doesn't see much action, mostly due to its prohibitive cost. But if Curtain Wall is sitting at 10 strength, I think it's definitely enough to consider it over Hadrian's Wall if you're running Oversight AI. I think expecting to res this manually is tricky, to say the least, but if we're talking about splashing Sweeps Week and just focusing on heavy economy, which Wayland does really well already, I think it's totally possible, and this could totally just lock the runner out of a server for most of the game or even just at the end game. I don't think it's going to have a gigantic impact, but I can definitely see it seeing some niche play, and I think that those players are going to love the card. I kind of want to play it just for the flavor text alone. I think it's a C-. Punitive Counter-Strike is a Black Ops operation for the Wayland Consortium. It's a cost of 3, influence of 2, Trace 5. If successful, do meat damage to the runner equal to the number of agenda points on agendas he or she stole during his or her last turn. Basically, just the amount of agenda points that they got last turn if they stole any from you. So it's basically accounting for more than one agenda if they did. I think this is awful. I think this is really bad. I think it's way worse than it looks. The meat damage is dependent on two very important things. A, winning the trace, and B, the runner stealing an agenda last turn, which means it's going to be sitting dead in your hand for a good portion of the game until you can get it off right at the right time. And even if you do get it off right at the right time, there's still a trace to deal with there. It's just, there's a lot of variables going into it, and if you aren't able to get it off at the right time, then you're going to be pretty bummed. That is a lot to ask for three meat damage. It's a max of 3 meat damage. But it does help burn through carapaces, which is worth noting. But if we're really looking to deal damage, I don't know if this is the right thing to do it. I can see an argument for it in a Jinteki deck that's just looking to flatline the runner because that's basically what they do. At that point, they're in really good shape to smash with a Neural EMP, or if they stole a Fetal AI last turn. But I think this is a little bit of best case scenario mentality here. I think the floor on the card is pretty low. Worst case, it's just going to sit in your hand dead, doing nothing for most of the game. And even if you get it off and you win the trace and you deal the damage, and then you don't win the game, you're just feeling miserable. You know, 3, they can recover from 3, and you need to have something else to help this card out to get there. And I prefer my finishers to just do the job on their own when I need it, not to ask for a lot of other criteria, not to mention for other cards before it can help me close out a game. I could be wrong. I could totally be wrong, but this is a D+ at best, for me anyway. And finally, last but not least, we've got Veterans Program. It's an agenda, initiative, neutral, 3 advancement requirement, 1 score. When you score Veterans Program, you may remove up to 2 bad publicity. Okay, all right, it's a little bit niche, but I can definitely see it seeing some play. In a Wayland deck, when you're already stacking up on bad pub, a 3-1 that removes 2 is perfectly serviceable. You're not too terribly upset if they steal it. It's only worth 1 point, but the effect for you could make a giant difference in the game. I'm a little bit surprised that it's neutral, not Wayland. Because it's neutral and because of some of the HB ice that we saw in True Colors, this one, it looks like bad pub is going to get a little bit more spread out. Wayland was basically the only one to get bad pub for a little while, but it looks like NBN's getting a little bit and HB is getting a little bit. So as bad pub becomes more of a concern for all of the corps moving forward, I think it's definitely going to be pretty good. I don't think it's an auto-include, but it definitely does a job in the decks that want it. If you are getting bad pub and you know you're getting bad pub, I think then it easily becomes one of those cards that's just kind of stable. It's one of the neutral agendas that you know you definitely want to run. I think it's pretty easily a C. That about does it for True Colors, the 4th pack in the spin cycle for Netrunner. Really, really excited to play with this. There's so much good stuff in there for the Corp. I'm really excited to play with Sweeps Week. Great stuff in Shock. We've got just fantastic stuff all over the place for the Corp. NBN and Jinteki in particular just got quite a bit of love. Some good stuff for the runners too, not quite as much, but there is a little bit more in the way of Anarchs. Really excited to start seeing Anarchs really make an impact in the competitive scene. We have not seen lots of Anarch runners do particularly well, so I'm really excited to see if ye old Red Queen, Reina Roja, makes a difference. And with Keyhole and a few more new toys in this one, I think it might make a pretty decent impact. Very excited to play True Colors. Hesitant to give the whole thing an actual letter grade, but suffice it to say that I'm going to be buying it very soon. And let me know what you guys think about the cards. And let me know if you think I'm like way off base about some of them. I really love talking to you guys after I do these videos. It gets a really good discussion going. So really excited to see what you think. Again, thank you so much for watching these videos. It really does mean a lot to me. If you enjoyed this one, you can hit the like button down below. It makes a huge difference for the video. And if you want to see more videos with my dumb face in them, you can hit subscribe also down below. Also, I have a bunch of other videos. I've done other Netrunner videos before, video game reviews, things of that nature. So if you want to see that, you can subscribe or click over here and see all of the videos. Again, thank you so much for watching. I realize that reviews do take quite a bit of time and that yours is probably valuable. Maybe not. Maybe you're just sitting at home anyway. But either way, thank you, and I will see you in the next video. All right. No! No! Ugh. am running. We're rolling, right?
Yeah.
Jeez. What am I, an amateur?
Actually, yes.